And we are live, I think. Hey, everybody. If you are tuning in on the rebroadcast, just as always, I'm running several minutes behind, so need to just trying to. I send it to live stream and everything before I'm even fully set up, just because I'm trying to make up for the fact that I'm not as ready as I should be. Which you'd think by now I'd be better at that, but you know, I tend to run a little bit behind on things. So, oh well, that's just the way I am. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Hopefully we could have a nice fun discussion about movies and other kinds of stuff. I've had a not fun day on Twitter for about the last 12 hours. I haven't watched Marriage Story, and I was thinking about maybe I'd watch it last night, maybe, and I checked to see when it dropped. Maybe looked into it Thursday night because I heard maybe it dropped early. But at the same time, it's a movie I'm not really excited to watch. I'm not big into like deep family dramas. Like I know the weight of them. I can appreciate them. I'm sure it's fantastic. But a movie about divorce does not immediately appeal to me, especially a very realistic one. The tension, the drama. That is not something that immediately appeals to me because I've lived through a couple divorces and they weren't particularly fun to watch when I was growing up. And so I just tweeted this out last night. And it was basically, I know I probably should watch this movie, but there's nothing that really appeals to me about watching a 2.5-hour dramedy about divorce. That's not really my thing. And it turned into like 12 hours straight of attempting to of people like you're a movie critic, like you should be objective. Objective? I just said, I'm making an objective statement. I'm just saying it doesn't appeal to me. It's your job, so you should do this. And hours of trying to re-explain myself, and for some reason I took the bait. I kept playing the game for some reason, and that's my own fault that I haven't figured out yet how to not take the bait. I still think that if I talk enough, I can convince people of my position on things, and it never works. Every time I find myself just talking to a wall, and people getting more and more belligerent, and people getting mean-spirited. So actually, I rarely block people on Twitter. I blocked 2 different people because they were just, everything they posted was just totally devoid of humanity, when very clearly I was making very human posts, very personal posts about my reasoning for not wanting to watch something, and they could only see me as movie critic YouTuber guy. And that, at a certain point in time, that's when I'm like, you're not even, if you can't see that I'm a person, and I'm talking to you as a person and relating to my human experiences, we're not gonna play this game. Anyway, all right, what do we got in here? Got a bunch of people in here. Majestic Demon, good afternoon. Sean, good afternoon to you too. Andy, hello to you too. Jeffrey, hello to you too. Majestic Demon, I've never clicked on any invocation faster than this. Awesome. So yeah, glad to be back. I think I missed last week. My wife was out of town Sunday night until late Thursday night, and so I had a pretty just chaotic week with the kids, and so we need to prep for that. So that's why we didn't end up doing anything last Saturday. I skipped out because it's just getting all the clothes ready and grocery shopping and everything to make sure that it's easy and everything can happen. So I missed last week, but I'm back. Natty99, you shouldn't respond to people giving you a hard time about Marriage Story. Yeah, it's one of my faults. I don't like to be misunderstood, and I believe if I talk enough, if I reason with people enough, it'll click. Not that I don't necessarily, not that I'm trying to convince people, but I can get someone to go, oh, I understand him. I think it's a great movie and you should watch it, but I understand why it wouldn't be appealing. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not looking for anyone to be like, oh yeah, you should. I literally just want people to have this kind of oh, yeah, a guy that has experienced divorces and drawn to that movie. So I just think if I talk enough, that it'll click. And I'm not there yet. Maybe I don't know. It's so tough for me when I read certain things. It just knocks that part of my brain that's just no. Oh, if this person needs to understand this, and in my brain it's so simple. If they just see this thing, that I'm not saying I'm not going to watch it. I'm not saying I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just saying that it's very personal to me, and therefore it's not something I'm drawn to. If they just get that, they'll get me. And I just think if I say, and it never works. Never works. And then also when they start doing that stuff, I start getting emotional too and getting annoyed. And so I start doing the Twitter thing where you try and be funny and trying to burn people. and which in and of itself doesn't put me in a good position because I have the bigger audience, and whenever you have the bigger audience and you're just like trying to flame people, you look kind of silly, and so it just never wins. But I for some reason I take the bait still. I'd still take the bait on it. Rich reviews. Greetings from Cozumel, Mexico. Oh, very cool, very cool. Excited that you're out there. And I probably should do more actual vacation type things. I'm just not that kind of a person. I like work trips I'm fine with, but like I just actually taking time off, I am not good at that at all. Like I even think I've worked for myself for 9 months now, 10 months now. It's almost 10 months now, and like I don't think I've taken very few days off at all. Matt G, Van Halen, Roth, or Hagar? What's Roth, Hagar, or Sharon? There's 3 lead singers of Van Halen. I've never been a Hagar fan in Van Halen. I've never been a fan of that era of stuff. Just the songwriting, and I had Balance, and I think a couple others. I probably own all of them in CDs at some point in time, some fashion. I think the Roth stuff is pretty much all fantastic. There's so many just classic, fun, party rock, party metal songs inside of there that very frequently, I'm throwing on Unchained and Jump, Girl You Really Got Me Now, and I mean all that stuff, Run With the Devil. So definitely Roth is my favorite. I have a lot of nostalgia for Sharon. The Van Halen 3 came out when I was in high school. And so I was right as I was getting into music and understanding who Van Halen is. That's when that album came out. And so I've never had the hate for it that a lot of other people have had for it. So and other thing is I like a lot of solo Sammy Hagar. And when I was in high school, Mas Tequila came out, of course. I Can't Drive 55 from Back to the Future 2. So I like a lot of his solo stuff. The partnership with Van Halen just never really clicked with me. But Roth, by far. And even I like a lot of David Lee Roth's 80s solo stuff is also pretty good. He's got some great singles in there as well. So anyway, there you go. Woo! Lots of questions. Rich reviews. I felt the No Time to Die trailer is your daily dose of Bond, and hopefully we can get a good concluding story. Yeah, it feels pretty in line with the tone, the types of stuff they've been trying to do with this version of the character. Doesn't really seem like a reinvention, but it does seem like a continuation and a little bit different of a flavor that we've seen inside of this one, so I'm very optimistic. Majestic Demon, I meant to tell you this last week, I think, but I forgot. Happy belated birthday. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. My birthday was a week and a half ago. Actually, on Thanksgiving Day was my birthday. Turned 38, so now I'm... if you play it out, I'm getting very close to 40. Less than 2 years away. I'm now between 38 and 40. I'm like 1% of the way between that to 40. So, I'm getting old. Jeffrey, did you see the Wonder Woman 84 teaser footage trailer tomorrow? I believe. I saw it show up on Twitter. I didn't. I don't try not to watch teasers for trailers, even though it's 30 seconds or whatever. I just rather would watch the trailer. So seeing it like, oh, okay, it's definitely coming tomorrow. It's confirmed they're dropping it. Very cool. The specific footage, I'm not gonna dive into that. Like, what did I see in there? And even in that little teaser, there's some pretty crazy little shots that I did see pop up on Twitter. But I'll cover it tomorrow on my channel. Majestic Demon, which trailers that you did not like proved you wrong when you saw the movie out of the trailer? Edge of Tomorrow is kind of the classic example from the last decade of like a trailer that's like, what is this? Like pretentious sci-fi movie. And it just seemed so bland and flavorless. Like, let's just do sci-fi Groundhog's Day. What's the point of this? And then you see the movie and it's just a ton of fun, a very lively type film that, almost instantly you start watching Edge of Tomorrow and you're confused as to the tone of the trailers because they're just so... It had like this song that's like, is this the end? Depressing music. And you watch the movie and it's really funny and you like the characters and there's a fun arc for Tom Cruise. That's a classic example. Some that I wasn't crazy about the Avengers trailer for the first Avengers movie in 2012. it didn't actually hook me all that much for how important of a movie, big of a movie it was. I was kind of like, okay, I mean, I guess this is okay. And then of course the movie wowed me. I mean, I've changed the game for the genre, and I've been raving about it for 7 years now. But that one didn't click with me too much. Those are two that kind of immediately come to mind. I'm sure there's tons of other examples, and one that I would rewatch this past week, and we'll be watching the sequel to it this upcoming week, like Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. The trailers, when I first saw the pictures of it, was like, oh, what? Jumanji, and they're going into a video game, okay. And then the movie itself is just so fun. So those are a few. Jackson, Marriage Story was disappointing for me because the couple is in the theater acting industry, which is the most the relationship problems stem from. This movie fails to make its character problems relatable to folks outside of New York and L.A. Did you tell me that on Twitter? Did you leave that comment on Twitter? Because if you did, I read it. I just didn't know that was you. In which case, now I'm putting the pieces together of which people. Because maybe I just didn't. Maybe Jackson is in there, but I got almost that exact tweet on Twitter, and I did not know it was you. Yeah, so I haven't watched it obviously, but I think there's a lot of movies like La La Land. I think to some extent was a little bit more of a obviously had more kind of icing on the cake, but that was one of the issues I had with La La Land is that it's a story that's so entertainment industry centric, that the relationship conflict of these people, that I had a little bit of that of like, I can see why all the movie critics and these people in Hollywood are just going bananas for it, because that's them. They took this big risk and they went out to the big city to pursue their dreams, but it didn't click with me on kind of more relatable levels, and so I was somewhat surprised by the not surprised. I understood the narrative where all the praise was coming from, but there was a side to it. I was like, it had a self-indulgence to it, and so I think that's where some movies like that, like they can lose you a little bit. And when you're in movie critics, you're supposed to like praise all these wonderful things about it because the acting is so fantastic, and there is real conflict and tension inside of it. And then there's a side to it that you watch it and you can't relate to so much of what these people are doing because it's just so kind of distant, and it's almost. It's like a person in Hollywood is trying to write about something very relatable, the conflict of like what happens in divorce. That's a very relatable thing, but they don't have the more human side to that of the way what that looks like for a normal person. So then they infuse the Hollywood. I haven't seen the movie, so I'm just running off what you just said, but I can certainly see where that could be the case. Richard V's Marriage Story is making my top 10 of the year. I need to watch 1917 and Uncut Gems to finally tabulate my top 10 list. Yeah, so I've seen 1917. I've been meaning to actually probably once this is done, I'll just probably go straight into it and record my quick thoughts on it. Later this week, I'll post a review on my main channel, but I'll let you guys know my thoughts on 1917 first. But it's fantastic. It's one of those movies you watch and you're like, how did you make this? How did you, on every level, like, how did you conceive of a movie like this that basically plays out in real time in a war and make it work? How did you make a movie like this that is a single shot? I mean, it's an incredible achievement. It has the emotion. It has the big war stuff. Very tense movie because most of it's not big explosion stuff. It's just kind of the tension of going through a war-torn area where there's dangers everywhere. But very, very cool movie. Jeffrey, do you think The Irishman is going to open us up to the possibility of more older directors bringing back their classic type of work, such as what Martin did? That sort of thing always is a possibility. And with these so many new mediums, or so many new outlets, that's a better way to phrase it. So many people trying to get into the streaming game and wanting to have exclusives that make their mark. Exclusives that are interesting. I think that's where you are going to see somewhat more things like this kind of appearing. There's all kinds of discussion about, Martin Scorsese, this movie should have been in the theaters and real cinema belongs on the big screen. And all of that's right. But at the end of the day, Martin Scorsese, of course, would have preferred to have done The Irishman for a big studio and had his movie released in theaters. But Netflix is the one that chose to fund it. Netflix is the one that said, let's do this. And so you don't blame Netflix for being the one that allowed the movie to exist. And I think you're just going to see a lot of that everybody is going to need to try and like go to this top level talent because you get credibility. Like, we're not just making direct-to-video movies. We are attracting A-level talent, and we are giving them money to do their dream projects. And that's what all these places are going to try and do, to try and distinguish themselves and have exclusives that justify someone purchasing. Like Netflix, one of the problems they've done is they went shotgun style, and every single week there's a new TV show, a new season, 5 new movies dropping, and you can't even remember it all. Like a new TV show starring Paul Rudd dropped a month ago on Netflix, and you've already forgotten about it because they just crank out so much stuff. And so I think it'd be much wiser if they start to realize, no, we can't just mass produce so much stuff so it all gets lost. We can't promote all of it, and it just gets lost in the noise immediately because we just pushed it out with all the other new stuff we put out there. I think you focus in on doing it right and getting things like people are talking about The Irishman. That's what they want, and that's what HBO Max is going to want, Apple Plus is going to want, Disney Plus is going to want. So I think, the medium will, it's not specifically Irishman, but the format itself will. Majestic Demon, do you think the movie industry is slowly running out of original ideas? I notice a lot of films that come out these days are either remakes, reboots, or sequels. No, it has nothing to do with originality. It's not that at all. Because that's like the common thing everyone says, like, well, Hollywood's run out of ideas. All they're doing is reboots, remakes, and that's not what's going on. Hollywood has had, it's like this escalating arms race with budgets to where blockbusters, they think the way to get people into seats is to just kind of keep going bigger and bigger and bigger to make an experience you have to see in the theater. In which case, every movie becomes a bet that's very expensive. And if you make a movie and you put the Joker in it, it's guaranteed to be profitable. Or make a lot of money. I mean, even as much as people as much as Justice League underperformed at the box office, it still made $500 million. Why? Because it's easy marketing. It's an established brand that the marketing department knows how to sell this to a group of people. They know who the target audience is, and they know how to get them to buy tickets to it. Or at least they have some idea inside their head of how to get those people to buy those tickets. If you have an original idea and you're like, okay, we're going to do this movie, it's set on Mars, and it's a rom-com, but it's like a 50s rom-com. Like, you say that, and people are like, what are you talking about? Even if it's an amazing idea with an amazing script and an amazing cast, people don't know what that is, and so you have to sell them on the concept of it to even get them interested, and then you have to make a trailer that they buy into. With Batman, with the Joker, people already know what that is, so you don't have to teach them what the Joker is. You don't have to teach them what Batman is. You don't have to teach them what Star Wars is. They know, already established. And so all what you're seeing with the lack of originality is risk aversion with blockbusters, and also, like I said, that arms race, middle budget movies. When it comes to like action films and kind of like tense thrillers, a lot of that stuff's kind of disappeared and it's gone to television. And so you have these blockbusters up here and you have low budget indie stuff. There's tons of originality in indie stuff. So I think that's even when people say that there's no original left in Hollywood, you're not looking at the indie stuff if you're kind of saying that, because there's no shortage of really clever, interesting, tense stuff here. But the middle here is gone. And this up here is it's reserved almost exclusively for previously established franchises that are safe bets. And it's safe bets because they're not very good at this. They're like, oh, let's do Men in Black. Oh, crap, that didn't work. Let's do Terminator. Oh, crap, that didn't work. They're not very good at this, but that's their thinking is, we know how to market a Terminator movie. We know how to market a sequel to The Shining. And I think there's all sorts of flaws in this thinking, as per what I just said. I think the missing piece is this middle one right here. They need to take more risks here and stop just doing these massive tentpole films. But you think about it, Christopher Nolan is one of the few. I guess a couple other pieces inside of this. Back in the 90s, movie stars could sell a movie. Will Smiths and people like you just put Will Smith in it, people would go see these crazy ideas for movies even if they didn't know what the established brand was. And that era's gone. The era of the movie star isn't really there anymore. And you've seen this Chris Hemsworth, one of the biggest stars on the planet, and keep putting him in these movies that they're not able to sell. And so when you can't use the star as the marketing hook, then you suddenly start leaning heavily into just these established brands. I think there's no shortage of originality. In like Christopher Nolan is one of the few guys that his name is a brand and people will show up. There's so few people that are in the Nolan category that anything that Nolan does, a broad audience will show up to check it out. He's like in a category of his own in that regard, and beyond that, everyone else is like having to scramble for these franchises. But there's original ideas out there. It's just all at this low level right here, not at the upper level. Rich Review's favorite sci-fi novel. I mean, I don't really read novels. I read the stuff that I listen to and read is primarily all nonfiction. That's just what I'm drawn towards. I don't really have a lot of favorite books or anything like that, so I wouldn't even have a good answer for it. When it comes to fiction, I'm just drawn towards the movies and television. Some of it's to the speed at which I read, my comprehension. I'm not as good with some of that stuff when it comes to narrative things that's not practical and pragmatic. So I don't really have an interesting answer to the question. Rich Reviews, you should rank the next for next October is the Hellraiser series. That one's not particularly high on my list. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is probably the next one of the big franchises that I'm going to aim for. Are you a big fan of the Hellraiser ones? I never heard you mention them before, so I just don't know what horror franchises you're into. So I don't know if you're just kind of randomly recommending it. Matt G, loved the comic book $1 billion ranking. It was odd to try to do. Was it odd to try and do that? Because half the MCU ranking, then it's Joker versus DCU films, then some oddballs. Some of it's just kind of what I do. You just kind of go for it. Some ideas are great, some ideas aren't, and just trying to find ways to different ways to categorize them, talk about different movies, and obviously I talk about the MCU movies all the time, so I try to put a little bit of a sprinkle of discussing why this movie was or wasn't successful or what surprised me about it. Didn't do as much of that as I probably would have liked to, but it is what it is. Like I didn't think too much of it. For me, it was a video that just was like an idea I had. It was like, and I just ran with it. It wasn't one that I'd been sitting on for a long time. Somewhere, someone made some comment that I went, "Oh, that is an interesting category." Or maybe it was just that I saw the Joker had entered the $1 billion club, and I went, "That's a ranking. I could run with that." And it was a hit video for me. It's the biggest hit that I've had in in the past month or so. And just always looking for things like that. So. Majestic Demon, have you ever considered doing a ranking of your top 10 characters that you can't see any other actors just playing? I never thought about it, so to answer your question, no, I haven't thought about it. I don't know if I would have an interesting list for it, though. I don't know who 10 people I would come up with, because I think like Rocky Balboa, really tough to separate that one from Stallone. But you think through, like all the comic book characters and things like that. Robert Downey Jr. is so iconic as Iron Man, but that's just because he's the only one we've seen. It's not to say that 10 years from now, restart the MCU and someone else wouldn't also be awesome. So I don't know that I have a lot of those that I would be terribly interested, because I like variety and diversity. And if you watch this stuff long enough, you have a bunch of these people like, "Oh, that was amazing. No one will ever top that." And someone else comes along and they do a great job. And, so I'm not have a lot of those where I feel like locked in on it. Jeffrey, movies-wise, do you think Lucasfilm would be doing any more Star Wars spin-offs after Episode 9? If so, what do you think we'll see? I mean, of course they will. I mean, we know that. We know that they're working on them, and they've dropped, the Game of Thrones guys were doing something, and they dropped it. Rian Johnson is still theoretically working on a trilogy, and we know more spin-offs are coming. Of some sort, because spin-off just means not the episodes are done. So then the question is, are we going to get more Star Wars movies? Of course we are. Disney bought that because they want to make a lot of money, and there's a lot of demand, and obviously they got to rebuild some trust with the fan base. It's got to work what they need to do and all that. But I mean, at the end of the day, Star Wars is a property that you can pretty easily make money out of it, and the way that you drive people to theme parks and selling toys, like it's this whole empire. It's not just, did we make a movie that got people to the box office? It's, are we feeding the whole entertainment engine? And for them, that is amusement parks, it's toys, it's TV shows, it's Disney Plus. And so they're just looking for how do we keep fueling this machine and keep people having new, interesting ways that they're wanting to engage with Star Wars. So for that, of course, we will see more. I would say Knights of the Old Republic is probably something that's coming not too far down the line. Just enough people are talking about it, and it seems like they're realizing people want something different, but in the same universe. But, I mean, as to what it will look like, I don't really know. The Mandalorian is kind of doing what the movie I've been proposing, a Western in Star Wars universe. That's what it is. And so, yeah. Mr. Downer, hi, Sean. Are you excited for Ghostbusters 2020? Well, I guess I'll find out Monday when the trailer drops. But absolutely, I am. Absolutely. I don't have any cynicism towards Ghostbusters or anything like that. I don't hate the 2016 one. It's the reason I started my channel, so I'm indebted to it. It's I've never been on the hate train for it. That was even my original review, was me being like, the whole concept was like, yeah, I'm just kind of right there in the middle on it. And nothing's really changed about that. I've seen that movie a lot because my kids enjoy it. And I just think there's more to do with the franchise. It seems that they're really doing something with it this time. They're not just... Basically, we've gotten 2 Ghostbusters sequels that are in their own way a rehash of the first one. We're in New York City and just kind of follows a certain template. From what we know about this one, it seems like they're throwing the template out, and we're in that world. We're down 35 years down the line, and we're seeing that world from a different point of view. All that sounds awesome. Paul Rudd being in it, so excited about that. So I only have large amounts of optimism for it. I don't really have any skepticism yet. Maybe I'll watch the trailer Monday and it'll break my heart or something, but I only really have optimism for it. Oh, got a lot of questions. Got a lot of questions. Rich Reviews, why haven't you ranked the Richard Linklater movies? Because I'm not interested in it. Wouldn't appeal to my audience. I don't know if maybe he's released a movie since I've had my channel, but it's a ton of work to do a ranking. I watch all the movies, which that's just not what specifically appeals to me. Richard Linklater is not, I'm a big franchise guy. I mean, you can look around me and see that. It's a kind of smaller, indier things is not naturally my thing. And so it likewise that my audience are people that like big franchise stuff. So there's just nothing that's making that one let me rush out there and do Richard Linklater, because why would I? I mean, I haven't watched half of his movies. I mean, I don't even know how many I have watched, but there's a ton of them I haven't watched because it's not my thing. That's not my niche. That's not the thing that I'm drawn towards or what I built my channel on. So the question is a little bit odd to me because it seems like from your mind, you're surprised I haven't yet. And from my mind, it would be surprising if I had. Matchy, does Black Widow feel like a leftover movie? A little bit. Because it just seems like, wait a minute, didn't she just die? Oh, but we want to make sure that we give her a movie, so I guess we'll go back and do that now. So inherently, it gives you kind of this leftover vibe to it. So yeah, I mean, it looks good, looks like a solid MCU film with a little bit of a different flavor to it, but certainly has a leftover vibe. Majestic Demon, when I watched your Revenge of the Sith review last night, it made me think of this question. Because so many people have strong opinions about The Last Jedi, do you think that will hurt Episode 9's box office? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Rise of Skywalker's box office is going to be hurt by The Last Jedi. As much as people say, oh, there's people just hating The Last Jedi, but they're going to be there in the theater. That's not entirely true. I know people that they're kind of burned by Force Awakens, so then they haven't seen the ones since then. And some people were burned by Solo. A lot of people were burned by Last Jedi. And you're just seeing kind of that trickle down of where Force Awakens opens at 250 million domestic, and then Last Jedi is 220, and then the early projections for this one are under 200 million. They could change, some different things could happen. But it's you just see kind of a declining interest. And so I think it's pretty obvious that it will be hurt by that. How much so? I don't know. It's tough to say, but absolutely there's there's no way around it that when you make a movie that makes people kind of feel like a sourness in their stomach of like, oh, wait, you did that to Luke, and it seemed like you certainly teased some mysteries of who some people were and parentage, and then those aren't going anywhere. You do something that just kind of kills the momentum, the intrigue. Part of what, I mean, that's even the way to phrase it. Like, so going into Last Jedi, we had a lot of intrigue. This is a good thought. I'm having it right now for the first time, but we had a lot of intrigue going into The Last Jedi because it's like, oh, like what's going to happen with Luke? I wonder what he's been up to. What's he going to do now that Rey's there? Why did he go into hiding? And then, there was kind of like, who is this Snoke character? What's going on with Rey? Like, that was all the intrigue that we had going into it. And some of that, maybe the fans built it up, but absolutely the movie did things that kind of piqued your interest and your curiosity a little bit. That's what J.J. Abrams does. He did a TED Talk called The Mystery Box, like that he talks about how you want to do things that make people go, what's in the box? What's in the box? Like that mystery. Like, he has a TED Talk about it. Of course he was doing that on purpose. And then what Rian Johnson did was he just went, no, and he just knocked all those down. And so then you get to the end of this movie, and we don't have any of those, all that stuff that we were kind of going, oh, I wonder. We don't have those. Like, there's just the generic, I wonder how this is going to end. But like, it's literally that like broad of like, I wonder how this is going to end, because all the mysteries and the questions were just chopped off. And that, I think, is a big part of the problem here, is that they eliminated the intrigue with their last movie. It's not just the response. They eliminated some of the tease inside of it. Rich Reviews, what do you think in the next decade has in store for movie theaters? I think you're going to see a lot more reserved seating, recliner chairs, and they're trying to make the movie theater experience the premium way to watch movies. I don't think 3D is going to take over. It's not going to be VR or something like that. But it is kind of really doubling down on, we're going to have a nice date night, and so we want it to be a good experience. And so you don't have to wait in long lines. You show up, you're in a recliner with a seat warmer. And maybe there's, whether that's people coming to your table to serve you or whatever it is, you got a table there and you can eat like a meal. I think that's where things are headed. And they're just really doubling down on this, let's make big movies that get people to show up, that you want to see them on the big screen. And more so, mid-budget movies and lower stuff are going to be sent to streaming, and big event films that you watch in a recliner on a massive screen is what you'll see in the theater. 9099, what are your thoughts on Adam Driver? From me, he was one of the best actors in the world. Adam Driver, I think he's done a really nice job with his career, with like leveraging Star Wars. And what he's done so intelligently is he's got locked in 3 big blockbusters that just keeps him in everybody's mind for 4 years. And then he's put out like 2... Like, he's partnered up with really good talent and interesting talent, and so just getting a ton of credibility. And you just look at, he's working with Coen Brothers, and there's Noah Fellow for Wedding Story, and Jarmusch for the zombie movie that he did with Bill Murray. And so he's just, everybody knows who he is, and he's built his credibility as an actor. And he's done a lot of comedies in there, and he's done a bunch of drama, like, a Marriage Story, like so serious, crying. People are like, this is the best acting I've seen all year, maybe in a decade. And he's established himself as that. And then he's done some of these even like side roles in these movies where he's making people laugh. And he's just a great job of having a very balanced resume for this Star Wars stretch that he's in. Rich Review, hope sometime this month we can do a Google Hangout. We need to, just need to schedule that. Mr. Downer, are you enjoying The Mandalorian? Absolutely, yeah. It's all of them. I've liked all of them. It's been fun for me. It's delivered what I want out of it. It's actually a family tradition now for us. My son gets out of school, I pick him up from school, and we just start up The Mandalorian, watch it together. He's been a As is the case with most little boys, he loves Boba Fett, Mandalorians, the jetpack, flamethrower arm, and so he's totally into all of that. And so it's been pretty cool to have, like, maybe this is the first time ever that we've had a TV show, actual TV show, not just a like Dude Perfect on YouTube. Actual TV. Actually, no. Even this is the first time we've had a TV show that from the first episode we've watched it together, and he's as excited about watching it as I am, and he's rewatching the episodes and everything. So I've had a ton of fun with it, and this is kind of what I've been proposing for Star Wars, is do a story that's not about the Empire and about the Force. I guess maybe a little bit in there, but it's a Western in the Star Wars universe. And they've actually, like, the plot lines that they're using are the ones that I have kind of even proposed. Like, episode 4 essentially was the plot line I really would have used for if I'd done a Star Wars movie. So they would like, hey, Sean, pitch your Star Wars movie. It's kind of what they did for the plot line of episode 4 of, they show up on a planet and this person with a skill set ends up having to help, the small village. Fantastic, Magnificent Seven Samurai type thing. Jackson, I thought The Irishman was so well paced for the length of the movie, except for the awards dinner scene. That part felt like it went on forever. Yeah, I at the moment I'm blanking on which specific scene you're talking about, but that movie moves really fast for a really long movie. And so scene to scene, I was just going real quick. For me, I was a little bit like, for the first hour, I was like, oh my goodness, I thought we were 2 hours into it. We're only an hour into it. And then once you kind of really, the story focused a little bit more and the Jimmy Hoffa stuff kind of really started to come together, it moves really quick. Jeffrey, thoughts on the confirmed cast for the Batman? Is a great cast of interesting people. It's people that you know who they are, but they're not necessarily picking the obvious A-listers. And I love that about it, that they're just kind of like these slightly off choices. Even someone like Andy Serkis, that if you're in the movie sphere space, he's a legend. To the everyman, they don't know him the way that we do. They see him and they go, oh yeah, that guy, he was in a couple of the Marvel movies, wasn't he? Wasn't he in 13 going on 30? I've seen this guy before. They're not thinking, wait, he's every motion capture legend, every iconic motion capture character of the last 20 years. They're not thinking that way. And so things like that I think are really smart casting. And they're getting good actors and people that have been working that, like like Robert Pattinson. I have certain reservations about him, but he's really done his work since Twilight. He's done his work to build his resume to where anyone that's like, this guy can't act. Edward Cullen, are you kidding me? And you could just go like, have you watched any of his movies since then? No, of course I'm not going to watch a movie that Edward Cullen. Well, watch any of them. The guy can act. Period. The guy has got a lot of depth to what he can do, and he's earned that. And so I think it's a very interesting, diverse group of people that aren't obvious picks, which is very cool to me. Jackson, someone criticized me because I said The Irishman was well-paced. They said it's impossible for a 3.5-hour movie to be well-paced. Thoughts? That's a weird thing to say. It sounds like the person doesn't know what pacing is, to say that a 3.5-hour movie can't be well-paced. That's a really odd statement. I guess it kind of says something about the person if they're saying a movie over a certain length can't be well paced. That's just a belief that they have. That's not an argument against a movie. That's just a firm belief that is kind of a weird one. And I think inside of that is to say that no movie should be that long is essentially their argument. No movie can be that long because it can't be well paced. No, that's not a real argument. That's an assertion. It's a belief, but it's not. So it's a pretty weird thing to say. Unless, I guess I could probably buy into the argument that there's a length to which point in time a movie is too long. Like no movie can be called a movie and be over this specific length. Like you say, a movie's 8 hours long. Is that a movie? Because it sounds like you just took a season of a TV show and called it a movie. But I don't know what that number is. So this person would say 3.5 is past that number. I don't know. That's an interesting question to me. Like, at what point in time does a movie stop? At what length does a movie stop being a movie? Is an interesting question to me. That maybe I'll even ask that one on Instagram. Try and get some discussion. I'm thinking about that. It's interesting. Just even random thought. I bet when you do your New Year live stream, a lot of people will think that Endgame will be your number one movie. I don't know. I don't know if they will. It's tough to say. I think a lot of my viewers, it will be their number one movie. But if you've been watching my videos at all, like if you're even kind of remotely familiar with my stuff, I mean, it's not my number one movie. It's not a surprise for someone to learn that Endgame's not my number one, because I've repeatedly put other things ahead of it and said I loved so much of it, and there's just a few things that just knock it back enough that it's not in my number one. So I mean, to some extent, yeah, I'm sure some people will. And it's something. My nose is definitely starting to kill me. So I'm sure most of you know, the longer I talk, the more my nose itches, and whenever I do my pre-workout stuff, that also just kind of like makes my body tinkle. It also makes my nose itch, and I went to the gym right before I did this, so my nose is in super itchy mode at this point in time. But so, one of the things it's tough for me to keep in mind is that I've got 140,000 subscribers. Most of my videos, like a good hit, like I'm happy if a video gets over 20,000 views, which is to say that 1/7 of my subscribers normally watch a video, and I'm happy with it. And the 10,000 is where a lot of videos are at, so it's like 1 in 14 of my subscribers watch the video. And when you play through that, when you run through that in your head, you go, oh, the vast majority of my subscribers have not watched the vast majority of my videos. And so there's some of those thoughts of like going, okay, so yeah, they probably don't know. They probably don't know. They will be surprised that it's not on my number one, even though it's not remotely surprising to like the core fan base. People like you guys that are talking movies with me every day, or not every day, but every week, or on Twitter and things like that. You guys know kind of where I stand on this stuff. And then there's the vast majority that they enjoy one of my videos per month or something like that, which is cool. That's part of the way things work, that you have a very broad audience that like a little bit of my stuff, and then you got people that like certain categories, and you have people that love everything that I do. And then you have you guys that are the inner circle that actually get to talk movies with me every week. That's the nature of things. My nose. Jeffrey, I'm looking forward to the movies you saw this year video. Yeah, I actually, right before I came up here too, I was talking with my wife and like telling her the time we're doing it, booking the time, we need to get a babysitter, watch the kids. And we were even talking about the internet stuff on how to get the best everything. So, it's very much on my mind to figure out how to knock that one out of the park. Jeffrey Patterson, just rewatched Knives Out with some friends. Very cool, very cool. I need to take my wife to go see that one. I think she'll really like it. And I've only seen it once 2 months ago. I've only seen it once 2 months ago. I'm not sure if that's what I just said or not. Jackson, what movies come to mind when you think best movie endings of 2019? Best movie endings? Endgame. It's got about 5 great movie endings. Because it's got too many movie endings. So that one. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, just bonkers payoff for this hangout movie. Ford vs. Ferrari. I thought that one really kind of paid off in the last 25 minutes. The whole thing is really nice different types of emotions. So those are 3 that come to mind off the top of my head. Matt G, you watch It's a Wonderful Life every year? I actually saw that. Is that a question? Same day, Force Awakens was quite surreal doubleheader for the ages. I've never seen It's a Wonderful Life. I've never seen it. No reason. It just, for whatever reason, my family didn't watch it growing up. And then there's all the movies I did watch growing up, so those became my annual tradition. So I've never seen It's a Wonderful Life, which, shame on me. I have no excuse. It's just never happened. Even when I tell my wife that, she's like, what? How have you never seen this? It's like, well, you've never shown it to me either. Richie Reviews, I may have said this, but The Irishman didn't feel like 3.5 hours, but I did feel Ford vs. Ferrari felt like 2.5 hours. I guess I would add the reverse of that one. That I enjoyed Ford vs. Ferrari a good bit more than Mr. Irishman. Jack Reagan, what's your favorite Leica film? I've seen 0 Leica films. Somehow we're coming up with all the things I haven't watched. I haven't seen any of the Leica movies as of yet. I guess one of the issues they have is bad marketing. that they don't sell their movies very well. So I've heard the internet tell me repeatedly how great their movies are, and I see the trailers and I'm like, what am I looking at? This is not working for me. So one of these days I need to watch them, but I haven't seen any Leica films. Jeffrey, I've heard so many different rumors over the past 5 years that we're getting a Space Jam reboot with LeBron. What are your thoughts on it? I don't have any nostalgia for the original one. Like, I remember it from back in the day, but I didn't see it in the theater. I didn't even know when I first watched it. I showed it to my kids a couple years back or something like that. It's a type of movie that I think makes sense to reboot every 10 years. And you could switch the sport around or whatever. Like, I think you just... It's a franchise that just lends itself really easily to being a fun thing to exist with a new sports star every 10 years. Like, it's very much a cultural type one. The humor is very easy to kind of set up and be appealing. So I'm kind of surprised it's taken so long, because it's a movie that I think the concept recycles very easily. So as someone that has no kind of nostalgia or connection to the original at all, I'm kind of confused why we haven't got this LeBron movie yet. Majestic Moon, by the way, I believe the package I sent you was delivered. I apologize once again. It wasn't the one I meant to send you, but hope you enjoyed it. So I have a slip to pick up something from the... Well, I guess there's two potential things that could be going on. I did get something in the mail a week ago. On my second channel, I did a fan opening, so it could be that one, what you're referring to, because what was in there could potentially been, you meant to send me a different movie in this franchise, and then the one that the game was out there. But so then I did receive that, and I did a video where I opened it, I guess, a week ago, and I do have a slip from my P.O. box to go to the office. I opened it to the office. I can check my mail when the office isn't open, so I have the slip to get it, but the office hasn't been open when I've been there. I was even there today, and the office wasn't open. So there's two different possibilities of it having... I've potentially even already opened it, and it's actually right over there in that little stack over there. David Patterson, I watched A New Hope last night. Very cool, I hope you thoroughly enjoyed it. David Patterson, Knives Out is my... I don't know why I'm talking funny. Knives Out is my favorite Rian Johnson movie, but Looper is his best. I could see that. I could see where someone would fall in that category. I don't do too much to distinguish the two lists for me, because I'm just not... I already overanalyze everything too much, that I don't want to have like two different categories of things like that. So I just kind of go with what more instinctive vibe. But I could certainly see that. Where are we at? Still so far behind. Maggie, what do you think the problem with doing prequels to movies from decades ago is? That you just can't buy a movie in 2010s is somehow a prequel to a film from the 70s and the 80s. It's just inherently, you just have continuity errors because the technology is so much improved, the picture quality is improved, so you know that you're seeing something more modern and it's claiming to be beforehand. So it works a little bit more. Period pieces, you can do that better, but as soon as you watch the Star Wars prequels, and they're just so much more advanced in the technology and everything that you're seeing, that it just isn't, the pieces don't fit quite right, because you're like, where'd all this cool technology disappear to? Why doesn't R2-D2 have all these abilities? So I think you just run into a lot of that. The human mind naturally can see the discrepancy between it, and it doesn't like that. Jackson, totally cool if you haven't, but just curious if you've gotten to check on First Reform yet. I can't imagine. I imagine not, since how busy you are. Yeah, I haven't. I have been in. I think as soon as we get as soon as we hit January, or as soon as I start my end of year list. What is actually my last one? With actually J.J. Abrams ranked. Once I do my J.J. Abrams ranked video, my schedule just opens up a lot, and I'll have time to just watch things for fun. But like, I've just been with trying to do the Star Wars movies, Rian Johnson, what else am I doing? What else am I... Paul Feig, the Disney post-Renaissance. There's just so many of these rankings that when you have to watch 10 movies, it just adds up so quickly. And I've got, people all the time like, you should just rank these, you should do this, you should do this. It's like, I have to watch all those movies. Even though I do this full time, watching 36 DreamWorks animated movies, 36, like that's 72 hours of watching for one video. And that's where my time kind of disappears really quickly with all this stuff to just get it watched. So I haven't yet, because it's so much stuff for right now. And then the year resets basically is what happens, and everything gets a lot easier because January is such a slow month for big releases. Majestic Demon, which DC villain is in your opinion is the most entertaining? For me, it's Zod in Man of Steel. I thought his motivation was understandable and made him interesting to me. Opinion DC villain most entertaining. Jack Nicholson's Joker is a pretty fun Joker that's doing very Joker type things. He's a more traditional take on it than Heath Ledger or the ones we've gotten this decade, and also my childhood. But he's doing all these kind of zany, wacky things and cracking jokes. So he's where my mind naturally gravitates towards. But I'm not quite. I'd have to look at a list and really think about it a bit. Matthew, I'd love to see someone make a prequel to the old movie, but an old movie by making the sequel look like it was older than the original film. Like making Solo look like it was made in 1968. That fits in the movie. Yeah, it's a tricky one because you think, would audiences really go for that? Like if you make Solo with the technology of 1968 and release it now, it looks ridiculous. It's an interesting concept for something to do, but I'm prepping to do another ranking. I'm prepping. Going to do the Sean Connery Bond films next week, and watching through them, there is so many things that it's a little bit tough for me to even kind of watch them because I'm not the most nostalgic. I didn't really grow up watching those movies, and there's so many just unbelievably cheesy effects and poorly staged fight scenes that you could never get away with that type of stunt work now, and the idea of trying to make something like that, it almost seems like you're almost like trying to make a bad movie is like kind of what you're trying to decide. An interesting concept, but I just don't know how well it would actually work. Jackson, I really enjoyed the initial big reveal of Knives Out. I commented a movie that can rewrite the rules, but still not disappoint with the storytelling. Exactly. Exactly. That's what the movie does so well, is that it rewrites the rules. It changes the narrative that you've been watching without you feeling cheated. You go, oh, that's what's really going on here. And then it turns again and twists again. And that's what the genre is supposed to do, and it does it so well. Jackson, I like the point that you made about Black Widow trailer seems to be recycling the Fat Thor storyline. Well, not the storyline, but the joke. Because the storyline of Thor is depression, and that's the storyline. The joke is, look, he used to be a superhero, now he's fat, which is pretty lowbrow kind of humor. And doing that again so soon afterwards seems like an odd choice to like really head down that path. But yeah. Jackson, that was pretty savage of you to Thanos clap your daughter in Black Widow reaction. Yeah, she was getting in the way, so I clapped her out of existence. Poor little girl. Jack Regan, have you ever considered doing a Leica Movies ranking? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it'll probably happen whenever the next movie comes out. It's all kind of a timing thing because I don't know. Their movies, none of them are big hits, so I don't even know how much demand there is to justify the 10 hours, 15 hours it would take me to watch all the movies. But probably whenever the next one comes out, I'll try and do it. And, whenever the Bigfoot movie, the Sasquatch movie came out earlier this year, Missing Link, whenever Missing Link came out, it just came out at a point in time that it wasn't I couldn't get everything watched in time. There's working on a few too many things. So it didn't end up happening. But I mean, eventually I want to. I mean, I try and think through what are all the franchises I haven't watched yet. When do they have a new release? Because the way YouTube works, if I release it at just the right time and it takes off enough, then YouTube gets enough information to know who to recommend it to, and it kind of becomes kind of evergreen. But if I release it randomly and the video kind of flops with my subscribers, then it just disappears from YouTube entirely, basically. It just disappears. If someone searches for it, or if they just scroll through all my videos, they'll find it. So it's like the timing of when I put those out has to be just right to kind of get that initial momentum, or else it's just dead in the water. So that has to be when the new movie comes out, and then that's a matter of okay, what came out around it, and do I have the time or the pieces to be able? There's just a lot of moving parts to how I choose when to do these rankings and everything. David Pettis, my top 4 movies that very little have very little variety because it's Inception, Dark Knight, Empire Strikes Back, and A New Hope. Yep. Yeah, not too much variety there. That's fine. Jackson, when I saw Knives Out, the shot at the beginning where you see what the coffee mug says, I said, oh boy, the boomers are going to bust out laughing, and they did. Yeah. Matchy, do you think we would ever get a Vic Mackey movie? No. I don't see how that could work. If you don't know what you're talking about, Vic Mackey is the lead character of the show The Shield. I don't know how you do a movie that doesn't just undermine the ending that we got. And enough time has passed that you can do like a prequel thing or something like that, because he does not look like what he looked like 15 years ago. Inside, he's just very much a guy that's pushing 60 and doesn't look like a guy that's 40 anymore. So, and where the series ended, I just don't know what they would do that would be satisfying, that wouldn't just feel like, what are you guys doing? Like, just let it go, man. It's not a good idea. So I can't see it happening. Okay. Majestic Demon, I was excited when you posted your post-Renaissance video. Surprised when Atlantis was last time was your number one, but it made me check it out, and I thought it was a solid, entertaining film. Yeah, I don't know what you would have thought would be my number one, but I don't know. I don't know that era very well, so I don't know what other people feel about it, but those just aren't movies I have nostalgia for. Those came out after I was an adult. It came out after I graduated high school, so they're just not movies I grew up with. And so people are like, oh, look at that one Stitch. They're like, okay, it's like a weird alien movie with Elvis tinges inside of it. Like, and they're not designed as kind of the timeless tales of certain eras of Disney. And so then they're not movies that I resonate with the way that other people do. Jackson, I watched an older video of yours talking about how you'd been too shy to approach Chris Stuckman at Fantastic Fest other than for a selfie, and you ended up watching a movie with him. Way to put yourself out there. Yeah, I'm a shy person. I don't like to be too confrontational, but it's part of what I'm trying to do now is build connections and meet people. So, I actually been, to let you know some stuff going on behind the scenes, I've been messaging back and forth this week with Chris Stuckman for something, a project I'm working on, the podcast. I'm working on stuff for the podcast, and so I've been messaging with him and Ryan George from Pitch Meetings. I got responses from both of them and trying to figure out if I'll be able to interview them. And so just so you guys know a little bit thing kind of going behind the scenes, but I've had some, all of it going back to meeting him at that movie and him kind of following me on Twitter. And so maybe something will come of it. Maybe it won't. Jackson, when you talk, your nose itches, and when you sneeze, your wrist hurts. My wrists are fine. My powerful wrists. Natty 99, Hulk and Thor weren't the biggest disappointments for me from Endgame. If you look at how scared everyone was Hulk from earlier days to large teddy bear into Endgame. I can. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that didn't like the Professor Hulk stuff. For whatever reason, that one hasn't bugged me, because they've evolved Hulk throughout the movies. Movie to movie to movie, they've taken steps in this direction, so it doesn't feel like this sudden out of the blue turn, like it did kind of like with Thor. And they've done that with Thor multiple times, do these big shifts with him. So that one didn't bug me, but I can definitely see why it would be one that some people really didn't care for. Jackson, do you have a specific goal for subscribers in your head that you'd like to achieve, or is it pushing it for as many as possible? I mean, well, goals are set time bound, so you'd have to say what time bound. I don't currently have any subscriber goals. I'm reevaluating how I do goals, because every time I set a subscriber goal, I either just like shoot way over it or come way under. And I track my analytics, and I get a pretty good vibe on things, but getting a read on how YouTube is going to work is very difficult. And what I'm realizing, where I am now, in particular, seeing there's just not a lot of value in just pushing for more subscribers. Like if that's just my goal, I know how to do that. I know how to just double down on Marvel content and Star Wars content and just put fluff crap out there. And it's not a long plan. So I'm trying to think through what I really want. Where do I really want to grow this all towards and advance my influence and do things that are actually exciting and interesting to me. Like doing the podcast won't grow my subscriber base on YouTube, so it's a horizontal goal. It's not an upward goal. They're kind of competing value sets. The time I put into a podcast means my YouTube subscriber base isn't growing. But it expands the brand. It expands the coverage that I'm doing. And that's kind of more important to me. That's the stuff that I'm thinking through a lot right now in what I'm trying to do with the channel long term and in the future. But I don't have specific goals right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to set specific subscriber goals for next year. I'm also going through a book 12-week year, so I'm looking to shift to 12-week goals as opposed to annual goals, because annual goals, they're just so far out you can't make a week-to-week plan, and so then 12 weeks you can set a week-to-week plan with steps in each point inside of it, so you get to the end of the 12 weeks and you can look back and say, did I execute the plan? I did. Did I hit the goal? No. Okay, so what in the plan needs to change and what needs to change about the goal? And so that's what I'm looking at for next year. That's a long answer to your question. That was kind of yes or no. Jackson saw Ford first variety in D-Box, which is the seats that move and vibrate at the movie. I've actually never seen anything in D-Box. I need to do that one of these days. Jackson, I saw A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood in D-Box. I actually really enjoyed the stylistic choices. I really think it made it generally boring towards the end. I really think it became... I actually enjoyed the stylistic choices. I just think it became genuinely boring towards it. Okay. I get to see that. It goes on. Yeah. Okay. Matchy, how you think Billy G. Williams will play Lando? Like an old version of himself with Episode 5 or include elements from his portrayal from Solo? I don't think you'll see any Solo incorporated because there's no reason he would do that. There's like what... it's like taking... Instead of doing your thing and expanding what you did, it's looking at the guy that was copying you. So I don't think there's anything for him to draw from there to give an authentic performance. It's a copy of a copy, which is a weird thing to do if you're the original. So I don't see him doing anything like that. I think it'll be an older version of who we saw in the original trilogy. I just don't even know what he would draw from Glover's performance. I don't know what could come from that. Matt G, quick take. MCU exists in 2035? I mean, not as we know it. I'm sure this continuity will be over by then. I mean, I could be wrong, but you're talking about... at a certain point, you play out all of your main storylines and all your characters, and the genre just shifts so much by that point in time, where... that... It's kind of like what happened with X-Men, to where they played out all your favorite characters, but they're still kind of like going through it. And so then we're taking like obscure characters in First Class, and it's like, Mystique is now promoted. Well, it's because they played out this whole timeline, this continuity for too long. When if you just reset it, you can kind of tell the fun stories about the characters you're most excited about in the modern era. So I don't see it existing at that point in time. Matt G, do you watch or follow baseball? No. Any thoughts on the Astros cheating scandal? I don't know anything about it. I don't follow it, that stuff at all. So sorry. David Patterson, last week I saw Polar Express in the theater. It was amazing because it was the holiday movie I grew up with, and it's my favorite. Very cool. I think I've kind of seen it with my kids. Kind of haven't. Landon Peterson, what James Bond movie do you suggest to get filled in on the new one? What one do I suggest? What Bond movie do you fill in on the new one? You just have to watch all the Daniel Craig ones. They all kind of lead to the next one. Like this one is a follow-up to Spectre, overtly. Like the trailer doesn't even make any sense if you haven't seen Spectre and understand kind of where that movie put him and who these characters are. So you have to watch Spectre, but Spectre is not a great movie just watching it of itself, since that one is built off of Skyfall. So you need to watch Skyfall, and maybe you just need to watch those two in lead up. But you really want to watch all the Daniel Craig ones to get the full kind of arc they're doing. Dan Dansky, have you seen the Free Guy trailer? Not yet. No, I've been at the gym and then doing this live stream, so I haven't watched it yet. Jackson, do you think the guy who played Han Solo in Solo looks a lot more like a young Mark Hamill than Harrison Ford? No, I've never had that thought. He looked perfectly fine to me as a young Han Solo. That wasn't of my issues with that film. His appearance was not on the list. Anyway, we're over an hour at this point in time, and just in time because I just answered the last of the questions. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, even as I'm itching my nose excessively. I really do appreciate it, and we'll be back next week. Bye-bye.